We're here. Yay! Yay! Welcome to another episode of American Sex Live. I'm Sunny Megatron.
I'm not. I'm Ken Belvoinberg.
Well, he never says who he is. Just get with the program, Ken. We're sexuality educators, pleasure advocates, and kinky perverts too. We're also married, as you'll find out when we're arguing. We're not bad arguing, like cute arguing. We're cute arguing.
And we're ambassadors of fuck.
Yes, we are ambassadors of fuck. We are the hosts of the American Sex Podcast that usually drops every Monday on all the podcast places like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and iHeartRadio and all those places. We're actually on hiatus until the 13th, but normally it drops every Monday. But this is completely different content. This is our Wednesday night live stream show where you get to see our faces. We can do tricks like this, and you don't get that on the podcast. This is also being simulcast to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube Live. So if you really want to have fun, I suggest you come on over to Get Vocal. Reason being is, we can see your comments so we can interact. I'm going to open up this extra slot so you can actually come on camera and interact with us. And after this recording is over in a little less than an hour, we're going to stick around for an after party. But that's when all the simulcast channels shut down and you got to be here on Get Vocal to hang out with us, because that's kind of when things get weird and off topic. You never know what we're going to talk about. So if you want to come over, you got time. The address is bit.ly, bit.ly/Sunny Get Vocal, spelled SUNNYGETVO. I can see you, KL. There is a camera right here.
There's not one right there, though.
You see two lovely faces. I'm going to get to these two lovely faces, which are Marla and Luna, in just a minute. We're talking about race and kink. But real quick, I got to finish our housekeeping, which we so lovingly here call our ball washing. So if you're new to the Get Vocal platform, hi. We are part of a Wednesday night programming block all about sex and love and dating and relationships and kinky weird stuff. And weird is a term of endearment, called the Connection Zone. So next time, tune in a couple hours early and catch some of the other shows. And each night is a themed night. So tomorrow night is True Crime Thursday. Friday is Fandom Friday. Tuesday is Tasty Tuesday, all about food. And Monday, I think Monday's coming. I don't think we know what Monday is yet.
Oh, not that kind of coming.
No, they don't allow that on Get Vocal. I mean, we can talk about it, but we can't actually do it on Get Vocal.
And I wanted to thank somebody in particular today. Our good friends from Atlanta, Teast the Beast and Mistress Alyssa, had requested this particular subject be discussed. So thank you both for requesting that and for being there for us through the years. Like when we were able to visit Marla and Sex Down South, they were the people that were driving us around and showing us places and bringing us to Sex Club and totally treated us like family, and they had never met us before. And we had been having a relationship with those guys ever since, and just wanted to say we love our Atlanta people and we miss you.
We love you. We love you. Really quick, before we get to our stuff.
Adam, thank you.
Yay, thank you, Adam. Okay, so Adam's like, he's like part of our shtick, you know, right when I'm like, oh, hey, do you see these?
Adam's our sugar daddy.
He is our sugar daddy. So if you're on the simulcast, get over here, because what you're not seeing is in the chat, there's a little blue diamond you can click where you can give us tips. So if you like this show or any of the work we do, because 99.9% of our content is free, go ahead and drop us some coins. You can also go over to Patreon. Our Patreon is patreon.com/AmericanSex, where you can become a member, where you get all sorts of perks. We'll send you stickers, you get extra content, blah, 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 blah. And what is the other thing I want to tell you? Oh, I'm going to drop some links in the chat. A couple of links for you. So I'll explain what these links are. And again, if you're on the simulcast stations, you're not getting these links, so get over here. There's our Patreon that I told you about. We also have a Discord community. It's a bunch of us kinky folks that all get together and talk in private, not just about kinky sex, like about everything. We share recipes, like we're like music, a little family.
We have a gaming section. Like I'm running a lot of my games currently for Pathfinder, which is a Dungeons and Dragons like game, and Call of Cthulhu on our server. So we do it on our Discord server and on Roll20. Speaking of which, I am making a slight change in my career because of my immunocompromisation. All the immunocompromised stuff that I have going on. I'm not going to be able to leave the house until there's a vaccine. So I'm not stepping away from sex ed, but my main job is doing TV and movies, and I can't do that anymore because I can't be on a set. So I'm going to be going back to my roots, and I've written 13, 14 books on role-playing games, and I'm going to go back to that, and I'm going to be hosting events for people that are underrepresented. So people that always wanted to play games, but they were intimidated, scared, or there were simply too many white folks there. Hopefully I'm the only white folk that you will see immediately. And then we're going to bring other folks in later. But like, we really want to make this so that everybody doesn't feel nervous or scared and they want to try. This is my favorite hobby, and I hope to share it with anybody who's new, who hasn't felt comfortable enough to try it yet.
And it's all ages, so it's not
family friendly. It's not just sex stuff, not just grown-ups.
Yeah, it's fun. Come geek out. Come geek out with us. Real quick, the other link I have in there, I dropped my discount link to Stockroom in there because like there's probably a bunch of kinky people watching, and I thought you might need that. So, you know, you're home bored, get some bondage cuffs or I don't know, chastity device, something. And then also our friends at Body Storytelling have an awesome show on Friday night. A lot of you know Body Storytelling, but if you don't, please click that link. I'm clicking the link.
Kick Dixie clit? What?
I don't know. And lastly, a race and kink bi-weekly discussion series. Why, what's that? Hosted by our two guests, Marla and Luna. Okay, it's time. That's your cue. Come on and unmute. We've got Luna Matatas and Marla Stewart, and you have a hyphenated name now. What's the rest of your name, Marla?
Oh, my married name is Renee. So, but I've just been going by Marla Renee Stewart because you know that's what everybody knows me by. So
because branding.
Yeah, exactly.
I am so happy that you're both here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have y'all describe yourselves and let the audience know who you are, because you know yourselves way better than I do, even though I know you guys pretty well. So, and if you can also let us know your pronouns too when you introduce yourselves, that'd be great. Luna, you're on top on my screen. And that's not like a kink thing. I mean, maybe it is. Like
it totally is.
Okay, cool. So, Luna, you're the top, so you go first.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having us. So I'm Luna Matatas, and I teach sex and pleasure education. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, but I mean, due to the state of the world right now, I get to teach online all over the place, which is fabulous. And I teach everything from, you know, butt stuff to cock and ball torture to femdoming, and really the theme that kind of links all the stuff that I teach together is owning it and helping us navigate the things that get in the way of owning it. So I've been teaching sex ed for about 10 years, but in the last 5 years, I've been teaching it from a pleasure-based perspective. And so I came out of like a harm reduction, public health kind of approach where I could talk about, you know, condoms till I was blue in the face and people were still like, yeah, but how do I get him to do butt stuff? Or how do I get her to eat my pussy? And so there was such like a gap that I really wanted to fill this. And then I met Marla, like randomly on the street at Toronto Pride. I was wearing a giant tutu and she was just like, hey there. Yeah, exactly. That so completely random in an event that brings like 1 million people to the city. And so we were meant to meet, obviously. So I'm so excited to be doing this with someone that we just really are like-minded in our approach to sex ed. So thank you for having us. It's so great to kick off our series by talking about this with you.
I'm so excited. Marla, tell us who you are so we can start talking about the things.
Yes. So, hey, everybody, I'm Marla. I am a sexologist, sex coach, educator, author, speaker. And similar to Luna, I do a lot of sexuality workshops. So we run similar workshops. And we totally met at Toronto. I was drawn to the rainbow tutu, and I was like, I don't know who you are, but I have to know you. And luckily, she wasn't creeped So I was really happy about that. So super receptive. And then I went to see her strap-on workshop, like I think the next day or something. And so, but yeah, we've just been connected and we just have a really good time. You know, when we're not in each other's spaces in person, we have a really good time online. So we have a really good video, I guess, virtual connection. But Luna is, you know, stole my heart. But yeah, I'm ready to talk about this race and kink stuff because we were just This came out of us yapping away as we normally do when we get together and talk. So we were like, and as business-minded people, we're like, wait, I know this person, and so it was just like everything clicked and came together. And you know, collaboration is just what I'm all about. So I'm super excited to be doing this with Luna.
Oh, yay. Oh, I'm so excited. And as Ken said, this was actually a requested topic. And we had been talking about, we're like, you know, who can we talk to and who can we have? And like later that day, I saw your announcement for this discussion series. And I was like, this is meant to be. Oh my God.
Yes.
Manifested us.
That's amazing.
So race and kink.
Thank you, Jiminica.
Thank you, Jiminica. We love you. So race and kink. Those who are people of color, you know, whether you're BIPOC or just a person of color, you probably realize that race matters in kink. But there are a lot of folks who are white or white presenting that is just, you know, kink spaces, at least the ones that I frequent, and I know regionally throughout North America, different cities are different, have different scenes and whatnot. But generally what I've experienced and what you've experienced too, for the most part, kink spaces are very white spaces. That's very much the default. So let's start there. Why is it so important that everybody talk about the intersections of race and kink?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to start or
you go for it?
Okay. Well, I think it's for me personally, I think it's always important to talk about intersections, right? And so I think with the intersections of identities, these are the things that come up, you know, as our privileges come up, as different oppressive identities come up in whatever situations that we're in. And I think when I as a kinky person myself, being involved in kink since I was, I think, 19 or 20, you know, and, you know, 20 years later, still sort of experiencing the same kind of things. It's, you have to wonder, like, what's going on here? And even in my, my master's thesis, I actually, there were like maybe 3 or 4 studies that actually had, people of color in their study that involved kink. Now, it wasn't about people of color. It was just like, oh, we just happened to see this Black person at this kinky party and right. We interviewed them or whatever. And so even during, you know, with my master's thesis, it was just like, wow, there is just not enough. So I focused all on folks of color, Black folks, actually, in particular. I wanted to do all folks of color, but Black folks, you know, being in Atlanta is full of Black folks. So, and just seeing how all of these intersections, right? Like queer identities, how, you know, queer folks, how swingers, bisexual folks, how like all these different people were coming together in a space and just being like, I'm one of few people, and how sort of it made them feel to be in those spaces. And, you know, we hear the same thing sort of over and over and over again. And for me, I think in particular, thinking about Atlanta is just such a different place So coming from San Francisco, where it was definitely white, right? And being in kinky spaces, I was like, okay, I'm like one of few Black people here. To going to Atlanta and being like, this is an all Black play party, like, you know, different. It's huge. But when we think about race and kink, and we think about sort of even dungeon space, who owns the dungeons, you know, and generally you attract people of the same ilk, right? So those people who own the dungeons are going to attract people like them. And so, you know, there's like a bunch of like, when we're like intellectualizing this or thinking about this, I think of like so many different facets, which is why we were like, we got to do this like a bi-weekly series, because there's so many things to talk about within race and kink.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Luna?
Yeah, I think definitely like very similar to Marla in that when I first got into kink, all the spaces were super white. And so I was like, wait, is this thing not for me? And is it just for like kinky, weird white people? And, you know, how come I'm not in here? And I started to internalize that and just think that, well, you know, I just need to accept, you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe Black people are not kinky, maybe brown people are not kinky. And I think there was so much of that internalization just so that I could get into these spaces and try to fit in. And so there was a lot of editing and taming of the stuff that I think was coming up for me. And when all the protests started happening, you know, a few weeks ago, I logged into FetLife and I was so disgusted at how little dialogue there was about this thing that was covering all other forms of social media, and how a lot of kinksters were also really irritated when people were bringing it up and saying, well, this is the only place where we can be sexual and free, and you know, we're not single issue people, and so we have an accountability to participate in whatever space that we're in dismantling stuff. So I think, like Marla said, it shows up in a structural way in kink, from like who owns stuff, who's considered a leader, who's considered a gatekeeper. It shows up in cultural ways, from events to munches to, you know, retailers, and, you know, who you go on any like fetish retail site, including a lot of the ones that are really popular, and it's all white, submissive, thin, young women. And so it looks like, oh, there's nothing for me there. And then on an interpersonal level, I think the first thing that comes into people's mind is race play. But we've got racism, we've got race play, we've got interpersonal stuff, we've got, you know, fetishization, we've got power and voice. So there's so many, there's enough for our bi-weekly series for sure. Oh, yeah. But there's so many ways that it can show up.
Yeah.
I have a very difficult question for the both of you. May I ask a difficult question?
Yes.
Yes.
Recently, there's, if you would have asked me this, or if I would have thought about this question I'm about to ask you a year ago, my answer would be very different than it is right now. Do people that choose law enforcement as a line of work have a place in dungeons?
Ooh, so that is fascinating, especially because we actually had a submission at Sex Down South where a past law enforcement officer wanted to do a presentation about how to navigate sex work in kink space and dungeons. And so I was looking forward to that presentation because that is fascinating in and of itself, right? Like thinking about power dynamics and whatnot. And, you know, I don't know. That's an interesting question.
I said it was difficult. Like, yeah, there's not, I don't, as a former dungeon owner, I have had more problems with police officers.
Like kinky police, like
no. Like we would have a party and there would be a situation where maybe a neighbor would call because of too much noise, and the cops would come in, start grabbing dildos off the wall, start like threatening people, and a lot of these people were high-powered attorneys and whatnot. And on the converse side, the only person that ran an all-black BDSM group in Chicago was a Chicago lieutenant. So she was a female Black officer, and she ran the group. And so now I go back to those thoughts, like the white cops that were such fucking pricks. All cops are bastards. I don't know what to think about this right now, and that's why I needed. Like, and I'm not asking you guys to be ambassadors of like anything, but it's a good thought-provoking question. Luna, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm very confused about this difficult question because
Okay, podcast over. Thanks, bye.
there's no room for this conversation. There's, I think it is very challenging because when you bring in the dynamic of like, is this person in? So the black cop running the kinky event versus like the white cop like coming in, then it also changes. Think about it, and I have a really tough time telling folks who like hold that identity from a marginalized perspective, like what to do and what to do with their kinks, but more like navigate like the physical and emotional safety that might be coming up for them too, and like the contradictions that are coming up for them. So in short, I don't know.
Yeah. And I think you can't just have a singular issue. Like you said, there's like different, cops and different bodies experience different things. So like all of these intersections of identities, I think play a role in that. But yeah, I mean,
there's a question online. Have you ever had problems in your dungeon with kinky officers? Never with people that were in the community. It was only people that were outside of BDSM. Just Dr. Lecter, just to answer your question. We also have fans, maybe even some people here that are police officers. So that's something that I have a hard time with, what I should and should not say, because I have so much anger towards them right now.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. I know a lot of kinky officers. And, it is what it is, like, and I don't, the way that you have your, you conduct your personal life and the way that you conduct sort of your public or your job and what your boss is telling you what you need to do, I think can really affect, maybe your personal professional life, or even the tension that's drawing in yourself. I imagine that would be very difficult. So, especially right now.
I'm going to be crunching on this for a while. Like,
sorry, guys.
It depends. Okay, so I'm going to put that one over here for a minute. So I'm going to talk specifically for Black people who are navigating kinky spaces. What are some of the common things? Like, let's say, example, you go into that party, you're like, okay, everyone's free, but okay, I'm going to make the best of it. And then someone comes up to you and like says or does that thing where you're like, fuck. What are some of those things?
I know for me personally, you are the most beautiful Black person, Black woman. And it's sort of like, thank you. Like, are you saying I'm a beautiful Black woman because because you haven't seen other beautiful Black women? Or is like my Blackness sort of like, are you fetishizing it? Are you like, what is it that made you sort of, especially if you're not like Black people don't go up to other Black people and go, you are the most beautiful Black person I've ever seen, or whatever, right? So it's kind of like you kind of take that in, like, what is going on with you that, and I definitely don't go up to white people and go be like, you are the most beautiful white person like I've seen, or whatever. So
yeah.
It's one of those things that I try to what is going on with you? I think that's one. So pointing that out, and then being the only person of color in the space, or the only Black person in the space. And when I was younger, my body, I was reading one of my blogs earlier, and my body used to just, it seemed like people felt entitled to my body. And that was difficult. So people would grab me or slap my butt or, invade my personal space because they felt like they could, and when I was younger, I didn't have the voice that I do now. And you know, as sex positive as I grew up, as much as I grew up, I just didn't have the voice to really say like, hey, don't do this or don't do that, or why do you feel entitled to touch my body in that way? And I think a lot of that just has to do with our history and how folks have felt entitled towards Black women's bodies and what they can do with their bodies. So there's that. There's definitely, I get a lot of the, you know, the old white men love me. And I get a lot of, let me worship you, goddess. Let me, you know, I want to be your white slave. I want to, you know, and immediately for me, it's like, what is in it for you? I guess that's my first thought. What is in it for you? And then I feel like, okay, give me all your money in your bank account. And let's see what happens. You know? Let's see how I feel later, depending on how I'm feeling about this situation. But you know, there's just a lot of sometimes you just don't know what people's intentions are, whether they're really real or whether it's racial or fetishizing. So I think that's one of the most difficult things. And I think too, when you're thinking about how some Black people who are in kinky environments that only go into white kinky environments, right? Like who don't like want to explore Black kinky environments or Black kink folks in their communities, you know, it's almost like people that get judged for that too. So it's sort of like there's all these different racial dynamics that go on. And but yeah, as far as like the most common, I would just say part of just the fetishization and the goddess worshiping stuff, I would say is the most common.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Luna, or is it similar?
I was just going to add that I think like sometimes with activities for like power exchange or whatever kinky thing you want to do, there's an assumption based on the narratives that are, you know, kind of stereotypes of Black people. And so you must want to experience this or you must want to do that. And so there's already an assumption of knowing just based on the part of the identity that you happen to have picked out and you visually see without any kind of discussion around like your humanity and what do you want out of this and what are your desires. So I think there's also a lot of fetishization around attraction, desire, and who gets approached and what type of Black bodies and, you know, what are we assuming this particular type of Black body wants to do.
The gaze, I'm thinking about too, the gaze too, like thinking about the white gaze and like, even if you're playing in an environment and like having people watch you and like, what are you like? Sometimes I think I've almost been taken out of a scene because I'm seeing people watching me and like, what are they thinking? And so I feel like very fortunate that, you know, being in Atlanta, being able to be in spaces that are majority Black and being, you know, at Sex Down South, being at the dungeon where, you know, it's majority people of color, where you're feeling like, okay, that gaze isn't so prevalent.
Right. So I've been hearing a lot of white folks on the internet and a lot of the white folks in my feed are you know, left leaning, newly woke, you know, like, and it seems to be, it's like all the white folks arguing over whether we should do away with the titles master and slave. And they all, I rarely see any people of color walking in and go, you want to hear what I have to say? So
other white people. Today I asked Sunny, am I racist for calling myself a dungeon master for D&D? And I honestly didn't know. I'm one of them. Like, I'm one of the people here that like just because this is the thing. Race has never been an issue for me because I'm white. When my partners look at me, I'm either a daddy, a military guy, a tattooed guy,
creepy
a
uncle,
dom,
sometimes.
creepy uncle, submissive, whatever role I'm having. But my race has literally never been an issue, and it isn't one in my head. And so it's hard for me to even understand and empathize with what people are going to without going through every thought process in the universe to make sure I'm not being a more evil bastard than I inherently am.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why I question so much. And I'm like, oh my God, like, did I do a thing? And I just don't know what to think.
Yeah. I can. Where I'm just like, Ken, logic, and he's like. So what?
There's a lot of
like what are people actually thinking about, and what do you both think about those terms? Should they be shelved, or are people getting like too?
It's interesting because at Sex Down South last year, we had two, older white guys that were, in kink communities, in their own kink communities. And, for their badge, they wanted me to put, master whatever. So, I honor that, master whatever. That's your title. That's how you want to go by. And it's fascinating because, the people of color would come to me and the Black folks would be like, I am not calling him master, whatever. Like, I am saying the name and that's it. Like, and I was like, I respect that. But here's the thing, at Sex Down South, we say like, we promote love and we promote like having that conversation. And so if you just say like, I know your badge name says this, but I don't feel comfortable in this. And can I call you this? Like, that feels better, and it feels like it would be received better. And they came up to me and were like, I like the fact that people are like, talking to us and making sure that like we're okay, and like and that we are and that we're also being conscious around like how we're moving through the world and through spaces that have a majority of, people of color and Black folks. So, so I thought that was, fascinating in and of itself. But the whole like master slave debate, I don't know. And that's probably something that we will address in this series. But I just heard, like, my wife and I were listening to the radio, and we heard like how realtors were trying to get rid of the master bedroom. Yeah, trying to get rid of like the master part. And I was like, huh. And so I don't know if we're coming into this shift of language, if we're really coming like, I don't know how people are going to move, but I'm really fascinated about sort of what's next, and I'm here for it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Luna, on the whole
slave? So I've seen the master slave debate too, and then I've also seen stuff come up around particular activities, and that might have been connected to collective violence that BIPOC communities, so caning, whipping, all these different types of things that people enjoy in sadomasochism.
Right.
And so, I feel the debate it's kind of flattened, and this debate whether or not we should use it, but I think it's more about how we should use it and really understanding what the context is, and so that we can be risk aware when we're doing these things. Like, it doesn't really help me to know that shibari was used for prisoners, and so maybe I shouldn't use shibari, but it's more about like, well, what could this invoke for someone, and what could it invoke for me? I think when we're playing with master slave or any type of power exchange, or really any type of kink, we might be touching people's darkness, and we might be exposing our darkness, and those are parts of ourselves. And so if we eliminate master slave, I kind of also think that it depends on the context. So there was in another city in Canada, there was a bunch of white kinksters that organized a master slave auction, and I was like, that's not okay.
It was Alberta, wasn't it?
yeah, probably. I would want to cancel Alberta.
By the way, if you're not familiar with Canada, that's the Texas of Canada.
Oh, okay.
It is all oil. Yeah. And for me, that had a bigger, more righteous discussion, because this was in the public sphere, and it was organized for people without, the consent of the folks that it might most harm, even by getting wind of it or seeing the, organization or seeing the event on FetLife. So I think that there's a responsibility we have to understand the context within which we're doing these things, not just from a historical or political perspective, but like, what does it create when we're playing with humiliation and degradation and all these types of things that expose parts of us that exist, whether or not we're talking about them.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I saw a series of memes that's been floating around Facebook, where it's like, it's basically, you know, in a nutshell, it's telling you the personal is political. Like any kind of power exchange that we're engaging in, if it's like gendered play, we're playing with those oppressive power dynamics. And when we're using different forms of corporal punishment, they relate. So it's like, yeah, the theme of this group of memes was like, don't think what you're doing has no context, you know, having to do with oppression outside of the bedroom or outside of the dungeon. It absolutely does. So this brings me to my next question, because if I'm hearing arguments where, okay, scenario, submissive woman, dominant man. You are playing with these power dynamics where, you know, the woman is assuming the subjugated role, similar to how she's expected to be in society, but she's doing that because she's a feminist and has choices and is exploring, you know, whatever, you know, it's your own personal thing. And people accept that. It's like, yeah, cool, you know. And some people use that same analogy to then go to race play. You know, and that's a huge and controversial issue in the kink community. You know, and some people are like, it, you know, granted, done responsibly with the consent of all the people, or, you know, there's a lot of caveats. If you are using it to explore your inner demons, your fears, your oppression, you should be allowed to do that. And then other people are of the mind of like, it is never okay. I never want to hear that you did, you know. So where are we there? I mean, and again, I'm going to tell most of like the white folks listening along, what you hear here, Black people are not a monolith. Just don't be like, oh, Marla said race play was okay. So I
earlier in the stream, I talked about forced ambassadorship, and what that is that's saying that my one Black friend told me a thing, so it must be true for everybody. Yeah. And like, no matter who tells you a thing, if they're just a single person by themselves, nobody is representative of an entire group unless you are a group of one.
Yeah. So with that PSA, let's talk race play. And also, I'm also going to open up the extra little lock square. So if someone wants to pop in and show their face, remember, you will be simulcast until the recording's over. You are welcome to do that. So,
and I have a question for you. By race play, do we mean all races and all kinds of play? Or are you primarily talking about white people and Black people?
Let's keep it simple. Right now, let's talk white and Black. You know, I don't care who's dominant and who's submissive. Like, but let's just keep it for simplistic sake, because we got 20 minutes here.
Okay.
Let's keep it to Black-white race play.
All right.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because we cannot take race away. Race is one of the first things that we see. And so to sit here and say that like there's no context to things, I mean, I think it's very hard, and it's very individualized too. Because even with some Black people, you know, they're kind of like, I'm in this kinky space and we've negotiated this kinky space and everything is good. And, you know, if I'm with a white person, this is how we're playing and this is, you know, fine. Like, even thinking about, I think about myself, even professionally, I always say I'm a professional top and a private bottom, right? And whenever I'm in a dungeon space, nobody is going to see me in a submissive role, right? People are only going to see me in a power, in a dom top role. And so for me, that feels comfortable because I always feel powerful, and I don't, you know, the race thing doesn't come into play for me. Uh-huh. And but I even think about like somebody who's white who's spanking a Black person, or a person of color, it's one of those things that's like, it doesn't erase race, it doesn't, you still see it. And I think it's just, how do we choose to see it? Do we see it under this guise of pleasure? Are we letting ourselves sort of be free? Are we going back to something that has been in our DNA? Are we, is this healing for us? In what ways is it healing for us? So I feel like there's just so many dynamics, but you just can't separate race out. It's going to be there. But I think just how you, process it mentally is the way that you're going to be able to get that pleasure, to get that healing, to get whatever you need from the sexual experience.
Yeah.
Kinky experience. I think kinky experiences are sexual experiences. So
yeah. And it's like, we can't determine, if like we're observing somebody, and again, you shouldn't be in a space where someone's doing race play without getting the consent of everyone there. I mean, right there would be something wrong with this scenario. But let's just say, for, example sake, if I'm watching a race play scene, I don't know what's in their heads. Like, I don't know, oh, you're doing this because it's healing and it's therapeutic. You're doing it for the right reasons. Are you doing it because the person of color requested this scene because they have their own shit they want to work out? Are you doing it because the white person strong-armed themselves into being like, I'm going to be the dominant in this scene, and it's bad? Like, we can't tell the reasons behind it. So that's kind of where I get like, you got to trust people and that they know what's right for them and they're being emotionally healthy, which is hard to do because a lot of people don't do that. So what are your thoughts, Luna? Like, yeah,
I agree with what you both brought up. Like, it's so tangled, and we don't have a lot of determination over our kinks, right? And our fantasies, and not all kinks come from trauma, and not all kinks can be shifted. And I think if you have a race play kink and you want to try and not have that anymore, then you can tease out what some of the things are in it that you like. If you like helplessness, you like fear, you like adoration or objectification, like you can put those into a different kinky vessel and still experience the same thing. And whenever I've engaged in race play from the perspective of being a submissive, it wasn't something I liked, but I went into it thinking, oh, this is going to be like objectification that I enjoy, and I'm going to be, and it was too much for me. But other people go into that space and they love the fact that there is this eroticization of the fear that maybe this person is actually racist. And that's where the risk comes in. It comes in with, oh, okay, well, I have all these boundaries that we set up, and this is a container for us doing this, but I could actually be hurt by this or harmed by this. And that's where a lot of the turn on comes. And then when I've done race play the other way, which I love, and like beating up big white men, it makes me feel so much stronger, even as a person outside of my kinky space. And it really has become a way for me to say things and do things that someone has consensually agreed to. And they're still fetishizing me. They're still fetishizing me as like a big black dom or a big brown dom or whatever they're interested in. But it's benefiting me because we've negotiated that space, and we're both aware of our own really different risks within the same context.
I have a question for the both of you. One of the alternative forms of, I don't want to call it race play, but it was a racially oriented party where we had all of the BIPOC folks get to choose whether they were a top or a bottom, didn't matter which, but they got to have every one of their fantasies fulfilled. But the other people there, like any of the Caucasians, did not get to be involved with that process unless directed to by a person of color. Is that something that you guys would enjoy, or is that fucked up?
I would enjoy it.
Thank you.
I mean, just to put it out there, I would enjoy it just because, number one, it's agency, option of choice. and having that power, where when in the everyday normal world or whatever, I might not be able to exert that power. So I imagine that would feel good to me. And, I've had some white people do some fucked up shit to me. And so, it's a healing. It would be healing for me just to be like, you know who you are today, that's who you are. And I'm going to go ahead and unleash my wrath upon you for this. But so yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about it. But
yeah, and I think also it depending on what you're playing with. I mean, the focus might involve race, but it might not be the thing that you're really into.
It wasn't. Yeah, there was nobody, I believe, that actually chose a racially oriented fantasy. It was more just, I want that person to do this thing. That guy there, he needs to just be there serving me drinks all night long and shut the fuck up. And people were liking that kind of thing. Other people, I want that woman to top me and not stop until I tell her to stop.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to talk about your series. I want to know from your points of view. So it's bi-weekly, you have guests and whatnot. From your points of view, who do you hope the audience is? Is this for everybody? Is it for white people? Is it for people of color? And what do you hope that they get out of these discussions? And last, that's the three-parter. And why are these discussions important right now with everything that's going on?
Fuck, that's a lot of shit to remember.
I know.
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
No, the first part was, why are we doing these? Why? Who is it for? So I'll ask that one. I'll answer that one first. So who is it for? So this is for everyone. And I think Luna and I, we really went back and forth. We were like, should this be a BIPOC only space? Should this be, an allies and accomplice space? Like, what kind of space should this be? Should it be every other week? We have a Bible, we went through all of these different reiterations. And what we came up with is, what we finalized with is, hey, everybody is invited to these individual sessions. And then our last session, which is going to have the panel of our sort of first season of people, would be a BIPOC only space. So, white folks are invited to everything except for our BIPOC only session. And so that was really, for us, it was really important because we need those exclusive spaces. And we need to be able to have those conversations and, process them in an exclusive space. And so I think I'm happy that we came up with that. And, for me, I am all about, from the beginning, I've always been about inclusion. Regardless of who you are, I think we all can learn from each other. We all need to be there for each other. And that is something I hold really near and dear to my heart. And so my goal is for, people, all people, whatever interest, our purpose is to get the intersections of identities in all sorts of ways, right? So whether that's race, whether that's gender, whether that's disability, whether that's, you're a sex worker, you're pro, like we're trying to get the I guess understandings between of race and kink within all of these different contexts. So with that said, yes, white people need to come, need to learn, need to hear these stories and hear these experiences, and also hear how they can be better when it comes to being in kinky spaces and what they can do to make sure that, BIPOC folks feel welcome and want to come back and play with them, on a humanistic level.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope folks that attend are also, they don't have to be part of like a kinky community. They don't have to identify as kinksters. They don't have to have a FetLife. You know, I think even folks that are just interested in playing with things, but maybe are dating a diverse group of people, or they're on dating apps, but they're bringing their kinks into their casual sex or their dating sex. I think it's also really important for them to just come and help unpack. Like, I think we're here as facilitators to help us navigate and give different perspectives to that that kink doesn't exist in a vacuum, and that I'm a person first and a kinkster second. And I think it's really important for it to happen now, because if we had advertised this, you know, like a year ago, we would not have gotten the same kind of reception. It would have been like a very taboo topic. And so while racism is top of mind, I think we got to dig out all the places where racism is. And it's in our bedroom, it's in our kink, it's in our dungeons.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a question about because we've been talking a lot about BIPOC folk, which for those who don't know, the acronym is Black, Indigenous, People of Color. So where do people of color that aren't Black or Indigenous fall in not just the kink community, but also your discussion series? I noted one of your guests is Midori. And I can't remember if there was a description or not, but my guess is she's probably going to be talking about like the, fetishization and the appropriation of Japanese culture and kink is what my guess, right? Am I psychic? Did I get it?
You got it. Yes. I mean, when I talked to Midori, she was like, yes. And the fact that I'm like one of three, like, big people in this sector is kind of like shows you that like the Asians are like, it's hard for them to represent like in this way. So I'm looking forward to her talk and all the things. But yeah, we are teasing out all of those questions. Yes.
There's just so much. You can talk for decades. This can go for decades and we will never be done talking. So those who are listening along who are white presenting, or, non-Black or Indigenous people of color, what can they do right now in sex positive and kinky spaces to be better allies or, accomplices? And I think it was Jim Manika who introduced me to the word accomplices, if I'm not. So I want to give props. I think it was you. And if it wasn't you, you just got props for nothing. But I think it was you. So what can people, because everyone's like, I'm an ally. And it's like, really?
Jimmy, she says, I receive it. It sounds like me.
Okay. All these people are like, well, of course I'm an ally. And it's like, honey, you got work to do. You don't get to call yourself an ally. So what can folks do? Like, for real?
Yeah, I'm going to put my blog post that started this whole discussion between Marla and I, because I was so angry at FetLife. I'm going to drop it in the chat. So it really lists a lot of the kind of common areas where we start to see race really kind of dehumanized in our kinky spaces. And then it gives folks some ideas on how to start even processing and unpacking this. Because for a lot of people, it's just like, oh, but we're kinky. We're both kinky. And so this should be okay. And we're both equal. And so we're not coming in as just kinky people. So even simple things like opening up FetLife and just seeing like thin, white, submissive femme bodies. I mean, like, is there nobody else on FetLife? Like, is there? So like questioning that stuff and stop giving it attention, like things like that, to really just say like, who's getting attention, who's getting desire, who's getting attraction, who are the leaders? The race play groups on FetLife are also led usually by dominant white men. And so that's not cool. Like, that's not okay. So we need to start really challenging these places where people have just like staked out their leadership on topics that really don't affect them as much as the people that they're playing with.
Mm-hmm.
Do you all remember about 4 or 5 years ago on FetLife when there was a group of rope enthusiasts that decided that they wanted a new group name, kind of like you have like a leather family, and they decided to call themselves a rope clan, and that lasted for 32 seconds. Not realizing what that meant to all of the Black folks on FetLife. Do either of you recall that?
No.
Terrible idea, obviously.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's one of those things where,
But
you
it is
know,
a perfect example of what you're talking about, Luna. It's just like, and they were like, no, we meant it like an Irish clan. Like, does it fucking matter, Captain Optics? Really?
yeah. And I think that, you know, even stuff like calling, you know, white folks calling themselves tribes, right? Like, I think even that, you know, sort of finally hit the fan like last year or whatever. But
where did us Jews fall into the whole tribe discussion? Do we have that? That's a legit question, by the way.
I have no idea. No idea.
Yeah, I think the tribe thing has left our sex positive community, but you know where I see it? In like the white lady, let's manifest our success business groups and coaching groups.
Marianne Williamson?
Well, yeah. They're like, come be part of my manifestation tribe. And it's like, oh! So yeah, we got to get that out to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and I think we need white Kinksters to not get tired. You know, I see a lot of like, I'm an empath, I'm tired. And I'm like, okay, cool, but racism's exhausting.
Welcome. And where's your resiliency? You know, it's just like, I really need white people to be more resilient. You know, like that is what I need personally. Like, I need you to like suck up the tears and just like be resilient, because that is what we have to go through all the time. Yeah. We just cannot, we gotta be resilient. You gotta just fucking buck up, buttercup, and fucking deal with it. Yeah. And that's one of my goals, is just like you said, Luna, you can't get tired. There's never a time where I cannot not uplift the voices of Black folks and BIPOC folks. There's just not a time. And when I'm tired, it doesn't matter. Like, we have to be resilient. So I need white people to be more resilient.
Yep.
And white folks, we have a couple of different jobs. We have to empathize. We have to always, forever, for the rest of our lives, keep working at being better. There's never going to be a time when it's going to be perfect. It's like being a parent in a lot of ways. You just keep fucking up and try your best not to fuck up again.
You know what? That you said that. I have been thinking lately about like white folks that, you know, we're seeing a lot of right now, white folks that are like, I'm not racist. I have a Black friend, and they're really being tested with, you know, and it's like they're now being challenged, and it's like, it's fine if you march in that BLM parade, but you see the fucked up shit you're doing right now, and they're just like, wah! You know, and I kind of am looking at it like parenting teenagers. Like, when I parent my teens, I have to remind myself that it's like, and I am not making a comparison like white people don't have developed brains. So that's not where I'm going. Well, with teenagers, I have to tell myself, it's like, they don't know. Their frontal lobe is not developed. They don't have the experience, you know, and it's like, as much as I want to shake them and be like, it doesn't matter that your best friend didn't talk to you for 12 hours and that you have the same dress, or, you know, whatever. Stuff that I think is absolutely fucking ridiculous. But to them, it really is the end of the world. So, like, even though I'm just like, I want to fuck her. Like, with my teens, I have to, like, kind of placate them and meet them where they're, be like, I understand how you're feeling, but here's a really nice way of me saying, you're being completely illogical, cut it the fuck out. You know, it's like, is this? I don't.
Hey, Nisha. Hi, Nisha.
Hey. What's up? I just wanted to jump in because I was thinking about exactly this yesterday. One of the things I'm trying to do as a mixed baby who's white passing is gently talk to racists and listen. And I've been making a ton more headway not attacking them, you know, because that's not a great way to convince anyone, is to, like, you know, scream at them and punch them in the face. But then I'm drained, right? So what do? So yesterday I went to a bunch of my white kink friends and I said, hey, I need some aftercare because I'm sweating. I've been swearing, but I've been like patiently discussing that. And, I haven't let anyone see me crack, but I'm not going to go to my black friends and ask for aftercare after I've been ministering to like a racist. You know what I mean? I'm going to go to my white friends. And so we really do need to like look at the outside of our circle and ask for support there rather than going inwards where we need to be.
Yeah.
And so, that was just.
I do want to say that we're going to have to stop the broadcast, but we're still talking. So don't go anywhere. Away. So if you are watching on the simulcast, or you're on Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, come on over to bit.ly/SunnyGetVocal, which is spelled SUNNYGETVOKL. I am about to make a comment. You're going to miss it. So get over here. I want to piggyback, Nisha, on what I think like us as like mixed folks, like what our role is in all of this and what I think white people have to stop doing. So if you're like, I need to know that, get your fucking ass over here now. Right now we're gonna say goodbye to the broadcast. So Luna and Marla, thank you so much. I am gonna drop in the comments real quick that all those links that I put in before, and the last one is the link to your bi-weekly race and kink discussion series. Before we head out, is there anything you need to tell people about this? Any burning information? Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
I mean, just check us out, lunamatatas.com, velvetlipsexed.com, and go to Eventbrite and look up Race and Kink, bi-weekly discussion series. No one's going to be turned away for lack of funds. Just really, we really want your support, and we really would love to have you in the room and have this conversation with us. So
awesome.
And Sex Down South.
Yes, Sex Down South. Yes, Sex Down South.
Yes. Anything else you want to add, Luna?
No, I just echo Marla, please come and have this important discussion with us. We're going to have a moderator who I think draws on what Nisha was just saying, is a white nonsense coordinator. And so we'll be a safe and accessible space.
Nice. Thank you so much guys, for the work that you already do and the work you're about to be doing with this series. It is what the kink world and the greater world needs. We love you. Thank you. Simulcasters for after partying. So bye recording. And if you're watching the replay and you're like, fuck, I'm gonna miss what they said. Next time join us live so you can be here for the after party. Okay.